Hi everyone, I'm Jason Crandell, and I want to talk briefly about what really is a big subject, but I'm going to keep it nice and concise. And that subject is how I, as a yoga teacher, work with injuries that I experience, and how I, as a yoga teacher, work with students' injuries. And I want to say that as a yoga teacher, I get a lot of people that come in and say, I have this injury or I have that injury. And what I've learned to do is to make sure that I don't put myself in a position where I am either confirming or denying or in any way diagnosing or trying to be unprofessionally therapeutic and tackle that injury directly. I'm not a medical provider, and I make that very clear. And so I step back and I say, okay, I want you to tell me when this injury arises in your yoga practice, right? So instead of trying to deal with the big picture injury situation, I just bring it back to the yoga practices and say, okay, when are you noticing that the symptoms of this injury are getting worse in your yoga practice? And if someone says, oh, well, my symptoms don't ever get worse, I never feel my injury, then I just let them go and just say, well, then I'm not in a public class going to be able to work with this. But let's say someone says, oh, I have this certain knee injury, and when I do a certain pose, say warrior two or triangle pose, it hurts worse, right? So again, the first thing I do is I make sure I'm not crossing any unprofessional line. The second thing I say is, in your yoga practice, when do your symptoms increase? When does this hurt more? And then if they can identify a certain pose or a grouping of poses, I say, okay, let's take a look. Now, once we take a look, right, the next step that I say, or that I look for is alignment. Okay, the first thing I deal with, if someone says that they have an injury and it's being made worse by a certain pose, I look at them in that pose and I see their alignment. And then I notice whether or not any alignment changes, decreases, and removes those symptoms. If I notice any alignment issue and I'm able to give them a different cueing and it resolves the discomfort, not the injury, but the discomfort, then I'm willing to stay there. We'll work with that. If I look at the alignment and the alignment looks good and no other changing in position is able to resolve the discomfort, then the next step I look at is the amount of intensity and the amount of support that the person has in the posture. So in this warrior two or triangle pose, someone has a knee discomfort scenario. If alignment doesn't change, and I see, can they decrease intensity and increase support? And by decreasing intensity and increasing support in the pose, does that resolve the symptoms? And if that resolves the symptoms, then I encourage the person to work in that way. If that doesn't resolve the issues, then I look at another pose that is similar to that pose and do my best to have them do that posture. So again, I make sure I never cross an unprofessional boundary and confirm or disagree with a diagnosis or give my own diagnosis. And then I first look at alignment. Second, I look at intensity and support. And then third, I provide an alternative. So I want to encourage you, those of you that are having to manage issues, to see if these three tips are helpful in your practice. Thank you and take care.